In this video, I'll be breaking down my process for how I redesigned Taylor Swift's Folklore album cover. I happen to be a pretty big Taylor Swift fan, and I'm still exploring the Folklore and Evermore album on repeat, even though they came out a few months ago. By the way, if you're curious about the original Folklore album typeface, this is what it's called. I am Fell DW Pica. It's a mouthful. Both the regular and italic versions are used on the album artwork. So starting with the original album cover, it's a black and white photography of Taylor really small in the woods. But there actually are 8 different album covers in total that were released on special edition vinyls. They definitely match together as a set. They all have a similar theme in the same black and white photography style. But I wanted to explore something completely different and not even consider photography as an option. The first part of my design process is to go out there and look for design inspiration. A lot of times I'll search on Pinterest for random ideas because I don't really know what I'm looking for yet, and I just gather a bunch of different photos and design to start formulating my ideas into different themes. Then I take these and start organizing them into separate mood boards. Here I am doing that in Adobe XD. And normally when I'm designing something for a company or a client, I will present about 3 different distinct options. And you want them to be a range. So the first option might be something safe and expected and not too different from what the client would expect. The second option is where you're starting to step forward and a little bit out of that safe and expected range. And that third option should be vastly different and unexpected. In this first mood board, I'm still sticking within a monochromatic color scheme. I'm exploring hand-done elements like lettering and illustration. And what I love about this direction is that it's still very on point of the Folklore album vibe, but it's also a very different design direction. For this second mood board, which I considered more of a safe option, is including some kind of hand-drawn portrait of Taylor and a little bit of a splash of color, whether that be with watercolor or some kind of hand-done element. I consider this safe because it will show Taylor Swift on the cover, though not in a photographic representation. And the third mood board, which I'm most excited to explore in design. I was thinking, what if instead of the woods and the mountains and all this greenery, what if there was elements of water and sky that we brought into the Folklore album cover? It includes a much richer, darker color palette, and there's just a lot of emotion involved. So I wanted to explore something completely different. Once I have the mood boards, it's time to start designing. I decided I wanted to try designing these album covers in the Procreate app on my iPad Pro. For this cover, I started by importing a photo of a landscape, and then on another layer, I started drawing on top of it, pulling colors directly from the photo. I didn't like the first version, so I started again with a different photo reference. I also explored using different brushes along the edge to get it that hand-painted feel. So it goes from a light to dark in this monochromatic 2-tone color palette. Once I got the colors and the lines of the mountains to look as I wanted, then I started to distress the design a little bit by using some of my Retro Supply Procreate brushes. I didn't want the design to have a clear modern feel to it. I wanted it to be more worn and comforting like the Folklore album itself. Once I was happy with it there, I exported it as a PSD file and opened it up in Photoshop on my iMac. Really, the only thing I did in Photoshop was to add typography. I added the title of the album in this free font that I found online with a hand-drawn element to it. Not cursive, but just a little bit of that raw organic feel to it. I played around with the kerning quite a bit, which is something you need to do with these hand-lettered fonts, just to make them look like they were actually handwritten. And I did the same for Taylor Swift's name. For the second cover option, I wanted to include a hand-drawn portrait of Taylor Swift on the cover. So I took one of the photos from her Evermore album photo shoot and used that as a guide to trace on top. When you're tracing a portrait photo like this, you need to make sure that the photo has a strong angle of the face, otherwise it won't translate well. It wasn't meant to be too detailed, but more of like a basic outline. On another layer, I played with a watercolor brush, adding little swashes here and there, trying to find something that looked good. I stuck with this light green color. I ended up settling on just this swash that goes from corner to corner, just to add a little bit of color. And I went over the portrait again so that it was kind of like a double line instead of just one single line. I played around with adding folklore in my own handwriting, but I just didn't like how it looked. I felt that since there was already this organic hand-drawn portrait, that I didn't need to also add hand lettering to it. I would prefer to use a typeface. So I brought it into Photoshop, and I actually ended up using the folklore typeface that is used on the album because I think it really does go well with the album. And for the third and final album cover option, I started with this dark midnight blue background. I knew I wanted to have an element of gold, so I added a gold background for one layer and then added the folklore typeface and basically used a clipping mask so that the gold would show through the type. Inspired by one of the images on my mood board for this direction, I started drawing these organic lines on top. One of the things I wanted to tie together with the reasoning behind using gold and these lines is connecting to the song lyric, "One single thread of gold tied me to you," in the song Invisible String off the album. I used a photo of the ocean and a dark blue midnight sky and masks to create this interesting composition, and used the same masking technique to make the folklore typeface gold. When I brought the file into Photoshop, the only thing that I did was clean up some of the masks because I realized I was off a little bit. Here are side-by-side comparisons of the original mood board with the idea that I had in mind and the final album cover design. The purpose of the mood board is to inspire the direction of the design and give you a good starting point. It doesn't have to look exactly like it. So those were the 3 different design options I came up for Taylor Swift's Folklore album. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Which one is your favorite? Leave a comment down below letting me know which one and why. My favorite happens to be number 3, the one with the dark blues and the sky and ocean. I just think it's completely different from the original Folklore album, but it still ties in with those elements of gold with the song lyric, as I mentioned. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful to see my step-by-step process, be sure to give it a like and subscribe for more. And leave a comment and let me know if this is something you want to see more of me redesigning albums or just breaking down my design process like this. Let me know.